Awesome. So I'm going to try and run through this really fast because I know we've got a little late start. So really the topic for today that I wanted to talk about is reported versus observed behavior. A lot of user experience design, if you look back, design, even 10 years ago, a lot of it was done what was called sort of like genius design. So when you think of genius design, you think of Steve Jobs, which is kind of counterintuitive because Steve Jobs was actually very much used a lot of ethnographic processes to create new products. But we've shifted to being more data-driven, whether it's qualitative or quantitative. And that's not something that's new. Marketing uses a lot of quantitative and qualitative data as well to kind of figure out new products to pursue or new marketing segments to pursue. It's not something that's completely new, but in terms of design, it is something that's becoming more and more prevalent. So a little introduction about myself. Most people know me as one of the co-founders of Starspace, which is this building here. But outside of the state, more people know me with my involvement with Project 202. And I'll kind of go over the company history and who we are. Also, because I'm a glutton for punishment, I sit on the board of 2 other tech companies based here in Oklahoma City, and I serve on the board of Techlahoma and Creative Oklahoma. So I used to show this to kind of display visually all the different practices of user experience design, ranging from research and computer science, human-computer ergonomics, and everything in between. But what I found is once you move into upper level management and become more, quote, strategic and role, really this is my life now. So about Project 202. So we lead the world in strategy, UI design, development, and marketing. We're an end-to-end shop. So a lot of design companies like us, like Frog Design or IDEO, they don't actually do the complete end-to-end work. They don't actually build the ideas and the creations that they come up with. That's really one of our major differentiators, is that we do it all. Some of the companies that we worked for, and I have a couple of sort of slides that we can show some case studies, but we've been around for 14 years now under different names, but we've worked with some really incredible brands. I'd say about a quarter of these I've had the pleasure of actually being a part of in terms of projects that we've worked on. Currently 3 offices, Dallas, Seattle, and Austin. Oklahoma City used to be 5 people. I think now it's just myself. But we're looking to expand. So we're looking to expand in possibly in London or Amsterdam, and then also another office in New York, maybe one in Colorado. And so basically we drive digital transformations. There's a lot of companies that are trying to figure out how to become a more digital company. I had a conversation with some folks over at Kim Ray. They've been building oil pumps, the same oil pumps for the last 50 years, and for the first time now, they're having to figure out blockchain and IoT because they want to put sensors in these pumps now to really optimize the flow, right? So you have a lot of these companies that typically wouldn't be considered tech companies now having to try and figure things out, or they become like Kodak and they're no longer relevant. Basically, what drives me and our company is, and I think this picture kind of explains it all, is the Sunday experience versus the Monday experience. So most people today, when they're at home on Sundays, they have this great app on their phone, and it's a pleasure to use, and then they go to work on Monday, and that's what they get. And that doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's issues with that Monday experience that cost a lot of money. It can even cause things like Hawaii thinking that they're being attacked by North Korea. And that's exactly what happened. It was a design problem that caused that. So Our secret sauce, we center all of our designs and insights through people. We go watch people. We go into their homes. We go into their workplace. We have really smart people with PhDs in behavior psychology and ethnography and anthropology. So these are people who understand people, their motivations, why they do the things that they do, and we go and study them. Sometimes it's really creepy because we're in the home, and sometimes they get into an argument with their significant other, and we're just kind of sitting there like, should we go? Like what? So that's what we do. And it's really to ensure that we're building the right thing. And that's what we're all about. Gartner, there's two ways to get Gartner to notice you. Either they find you or you pay them. So fortunately for us, they found us. And there's been a number of articles about our methodology that people have said will be sort of the way moving forward for building software and building products. And really, it's all about building the right thing, the right way, the first time. So more than 60% of businesses don't understand just even the basic truths of their customers. And one of the case studies recently that I was a part of, a major financial institution that builds core systems for banks was trying to help banks figure out why why there's a drop-off in people signing up for checking accounts. The basic truth is most people under the age of 28 don't even know what a CD is. And if you say certificate of deposit, they still don't know what that is. They're afraid of what APR stands for. I mean, people are just less savvy about money. But not only that, people that we observed that were the ages of 24 or under, when we asked them to get a bank account, the first place they went to was the iOS store. Because they use PayPal, they use Venmo. So to them, those are the closest things to banking. So why wouldn't they go to the App Store to find a bank, right? And so it's these insights that no one reports. It's this difference between reported and observed. I mean, if someone reports to you, they're not going to say that. But if you observe them launching the App Store first, that's an unreported truth. $600 billion is wasted on a lack of understanding. And this is really in terms of software. And it's usually due to poor requirements definitions. So if you understand who builds requirements, it's usually like project managers or executives. They sit in the boardroom for hours, they come up with a bunch of requirements, and then they tell their team to go build it, right? And usually doesn't lead to success. So some of the things that we're known for, we actually are still working with Southwest Airlines, but the ticketing gate scheduling system for Southwest Airlines, the Logitech Harmony One remote control. If you go to some of the Lowe's around the country, there's like a home builder kiosk in some of those places, so we helped build that. And then we did a prototype in-car sort of like dash media player for SiriusXM. And then there's actually a Fast Company article about our work with Southwest Airlines. Again, that was a pretty good project where we sent our researchers out onto the tarmac. And just things, again, we found that they actually had a guy who was paid full time to basically sit underneath this vacuum chute to wait for this message in kind of like when you go to a bank, like those little vacuum things. And basically all the flight operations stopped and could not move forward until this guy received this magical message that came through this vacuum chute, and then he had to manually scan it into a system, and then the flight operations could continue. So if you ever flew on Southwest Airlines about 8 years ago and you had a flight that was seriously delayed, that was why. It's because that guy never got his message from a bottle. So FedEx, helping them to rethink the in-store and online experience. Cash America, this is another thing where we sent, they wanted to redesign a unified inventory system. We sent our researchers out. Our researchers came back very scared. Because if you know about Cash America, they're not in the best locations. They witnessed, I think, 2 stores being robbed. They witnessed 1 store where employees were stealing firearms from the store. So a lot of, I guess, extra insights that we didn't think we were going to find there. And then, actually, this is fairly new. 7-Eleven released their new delivery app, so we had a large part in that. When they first approached us, we actually told them, don't do delivery, because you're kind of late to the game for that. They didn't want to listen. They did it anyway, so we helped with that initiative. So, I have a video here. This is actually an old video. It's called Satisfying the Cat, and it kind of speaks to why design research is important.
When I design a website, I don't work directly for the people who are supposed to actually use it. In other words, as a user experience designer, I'm in the business of selling cat food. The cats are not my clients. They don't hire me. They don't know I exist. But the cats are the ones I ultimately have to satisfy. In the web world, satisfying the cat is called user-centered design. In the cat food world, it's called staying in business. The cats are Larry in Bakersfield and Melinda in Tulsa. The cat food is the site and every ingredient in it. The party who actually buys my cat food is the cat's owner, my client, the executives, the stakeholders, whoever is in the position to give me projects, approve my work, and set it out for the cat. Oh yeah, and there's one other player, the factory. That's the developers. As a maker of cat food, there are 3 big mistakes I have to avoid. The first big mistake is to put the owner first. Now, I need to tread carefully here. I certainly need to satisfy the owner too. After all, if the owner's not happy, everything grinds to a halt. But if all I do is give the owner or the factory what they want, with little or no regard for the cat, then chances are the cat's not going to eat the food. And if the cat doesn't eat the food, how long is the owner going to remain satisfied? How well have I really served the owner? What the owner wants and likes and thinks is very important, but only once we're sure we've satisfied the cat. The second big mistake for a web designer, a cat food maker, is to imagine that the cats are like me. I love strawberries and chocolate. Cats don't. They love mice. I don't. I'm not a cat, and neither is the owner or the factory. So our own tastes and opinions and agendas come in a distant second to the cats. To be a good cat food maker, I have to absorb as much research as possible about what cats need and want and like. What I like is irrelevant. The third big mistake is to imagine that the owner or I can compel the cat to do what we want. Cats don't obey. They have zero interest in what we want them to do. The only way we'll ever get the cat to do anything we want is by understanding the cat's own motivations and skillfully playing on them by providing what the cat itself wants and needs. In the end, if the cat won't eat the food, then nothing else really matters. Sooner or later, the owner is going to have to either buy different cat food or lose the cat. The stakes really are that high. So, as a designer of websites, I have to make jolly well sure that I satisfy the cat first, remember that I'm not a cat, and find ways to play on the cat's own motivations. Only then does everybody win.
So our approach, revealing reality, this is what we call when we go out and observe users, observe people. It's our entire design research phase. And so today I wanted to focus on contextual inquiries. Contextual inquiries are basically observations and contextual interviews. So we interview people in their habitat, so to speak. And so it could be in the workplace, it could be out in the field, it could be out in the home. And really, it's just more than observing. We really want to know what they're thinking emotionally, what the environmental factors are. We kind of create this graph. I call it the emo roller coaster. They hate when I say that. But basically, we can track if people are happy or sad or frustrated for any given task that they're doing. And so we can plot on a timeline, the journey of opening a bank account where here's when they're happy, here's when they're sad, here's when they're frustrated. And all of those things play into how we solve, craft our solutions and solve that problem. Harvard Business did a study where they said basically 75 to 95% of new products fail, and usually when they ask those fails companies why, it's usually because of this statement: we haven't done the research yet. They just kind of went out, created this product, didn't actually do their due diligence. The New York Times, when they launched their Spanish edition, they actually invested a lot of time in the same research. And so what they found with the qualitative research is that Spanish bilingual customers, when it came to hard news, they actually trusted news that was written in English as opposed to Spanish. So if they had just gone ahead and did everything in Spanish, they wouldn't have had the same credibility as some of the sources that were written in English. And so they actually ended up with a newspaper that had some parts that was written in English, and then the rest was written in Spanish, depending on if it was considered hard news or entertainment. So again, like all those insights that you don't get, if someone simply reported it to you. Uber, I know, there's mixed feelings about Uber, but one of the reasons why Uber was able to really rapidly grow was that instead of doing surveys or interviews, they would actually hire researchers to take Uber rides randomly and experience the ride themselves, and then experience the pain points of customers or even the drivers. And so there's always this argument or talk, what's the difference between qualitative and quantitative? Really, at the end of the day, qualitative research answers the how and why, and quantitative answers what and how many. Sometimes you'll have a lot of quantitative researchers will say, well, qualitative research doesn't have statistical significance. And then my answer is, well, if you build a bridge and you see a car fall off that bridge and they die, you don't have to see 1,000 other people to fall off that bridge and die to know that there's a problem, right? So that's the value of qualitative research. You're making a judgment call to immediately solve a problem that's observed with just even a sample size of one, right? It's a very informed way to quickly find answers. If you're Google and you're able to get statistical significance in like 10 seconds, great, but not every company has that much data pouring in. So usually for most companies, qualitative is often the better approach. Again, things that qualitative research is often asked to solve is really the why, right? So if you think about typical questions that web designers or companies that want answers or solutions for, some of the questions that they might ask is, well, no one's using our dashboard, or, why are so many customers having to call and get help with blank? And really what we want to solve with this research is why. Why, and towards the bottom, how, if it's an existing product. It's important that we observe people in their place of work. It reveals insights beyond just what's passively observable. So again, it goes back to their emotional state, their expectations. And it really gives us context. And it's also important we don't use research to validate designs that are already done. We've had companies who have created designs, and then they wanted us to do this research to basically back the solutions that they already created. And unfortunately, what they find is usually our research will go in and sort of actually completely demolish the designs that they had already invested in. So in context observations, really this is kind of an exercise. The first thing that we do is we go and it's like, well, what do you see? And so if you look here, it's a cube farm. The person has 2 monitors. See in the back, someone has their monitors stacked vertically. This person has papers all over, taped to his cubicle, and so why? Like, are those papers important? Why? Is there something in the system that is not providing him with enough information that this person has had to go tape paper on the cube wall? There's a banana on his desk, so he probably works through lunch. Maybe. So maybe this person's always real busy. And then right below his monitor, there's a calculator, like an old school calculator, right? Why does, and it's turned on. It's kind of hard to see in this picture, but it's actually turned on. So obviously this person needs this machine. I mean, there's a calculator in your computer, but this person might need to crunch numbers so much that he's dedicated an investment for a really fancy calculator, right? So these are all things that can help kind of shape this person's sort of work environment, what this person has to go through. It kind of help shapes, basically their day-to-day activity. Kind of relates to this, so 5 out of the 6 client groups that we observed in that area use 2 monitors, adding machines, so the calculator, either a cube or open workspace. And then the last bullet point we observed last minute was there was a locked room where all the reference numbers were being kept at, and they had to be secured in this locked room. And then we noticed a person with a broken ankle having to hobble over to this room to get the reference numbers to only go back to their cube and type it in, right? Again, things that the system's not providing. So, reported versus observed. And actually, I'm going to play another video, but basically, we interviewed this person, and this is actually a former employee did this video, but we basically asked her, hey, what's your drive to work like? And these were some of the bullet points that she gave us. Her drive's 18-minute one way, 5 minutes to get to the highway, she listens to NPR, takes the same route every day, and she always has water to drink. So that's basically what she reported. This is about a 6-minute video. We've kind of sped it up a little bit. If you want to take notes, that's fine, but basically the point of this is, basically watch everything that she does, what's going on in the video, because we saw like what she reported, so like how close to the report versus what you actually see here. One of the things you'll notice, it's really bumpy. Yeah, after the fact, she said there was a lot of potholes in the road, which again, she never reported that the first time.
Is that with a camera or a person?
Camera. So we didn't. We told her randomly that we were just going to someday put a camera in her car, so she couldn't fake any of this. And she agreed to it. Like, she would leave her keys on the table, and we would tell her, one day we're going to do this. And so we, yeah, we sped it up. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think we actually turned this into a drinking game, the number of times she... Yeah. And I'll just go ahead and stop it right there. Um, so, just kind of observations, and there's probably tons more than this, but backs out of the garage, closes the door, continuously changes the radio station, like constantly. Drives over a bunch of potholes or curbs or something, and she even admitted like there's a bunch of construction going on. Multitasking at red lights, probably an understatement. I think towards the end she like was checking her receipts, and I think that's when she actually saw the camera. Like if you saw, she's like, oh crap, like. And then, there was actually 2 waters there. She checks her Fitbit. That was actually towards the end where she starts checking her Fitbit. So again, I mean, just even with the simple video recording her driving, there's more data that she didn't report that was observed, right? And that's kind of, again, kind of going back to the key of why observational data is so important. So we actually have a book. You can actually download it for free if you go to experience.project202.com. We have a kind of a summary of our methodology that goes beyond just contextual inquiries, but our journey mapping, affinity diagramming, all the way to our development. So yeah, you can follow me, my personal Twitter. I'm a foodie, so all I do is post pictures of food. Sorry. And then my Project 202, and then of course Starspace Ava posts some really, really great content on our Twitter. So that's it.
Does anybody have any questions for Tom? So what patterns do you consistently run into with shortcomings as far as your user interface designs and the split between what the user thinks that they need and what it is that actually ends up being the process? What are some common ones you run into?
I would say less with users, but people building for the users. People are like, I think the general thing that we always have to overcome is, oh, we want it to work like Google. That's like I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? They're like, well, we just like a search box. And I'm like, well, but like, that doesn't work if you're a flight operations crew, So I would say that. I think also, I know designers, we typically want things to be minimal and clean and show only relevant data. But there's been a number of projects where we actually had to go the opposite. And actually one of those, so we about 8 years ago, this was before I was actually even part of the company, but they redesigned the trading app for Charles Schwab. And so the team created this really minimal sort of like trading platform. And when they went and validated and tested it, it validated horribly. And we didn't really get why. And so we went back to our researchers, and so they replayed the tapes and the data. Stock traders kind of have the emotional they're emotionally like a 14-year-old girl when they trade. Like they get really excited and they get really sad and they get really depressed and they get really excited and they want to tell everyone. And so it was really important that they seemed important to their spouses or significant other. And so in order to fulfill that emotional need, they needed their screen to do stuff. Like otherwise it just didn't seem real for them emotionally. And so rather than just clutter the entire screen with useless junk, we added more data that would help them make more informed decisions. So like showing articles that was tied to maybe the stock that they're about to trade, or just relevant information that could help make informed decisions with tickers and everything to help give them that need to feel important, if that makes sense. So there's things like that, but one of the things that we really push with our junior designers is to kind of let your ego go and approach every design as if you don't know anything, right? Because if you come in with sort of conventional wisdom or best practices, you're already sort of bringing a bias and a solution that may be the wrong answer. So, our researchers sometimes like to point out whenever our designers come in with a bias. There's always a healthy tension between the two groups. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. Yeah.
I have a couple questions, but to piggyback on his, how did you discover that? Like, in observation, there's probably no one that's going to say, I really wish there was more stuff on the screen with someone's spouse, or,
Yeah.
going to be impressed. So would it have been through a verbal survey?
It would be, so while observing, while people are doing things, our researchers, again, come from either a behavior psychology background or an anthropology background. They pick up on cues, and so if they see someone's unhappy or frustrated while doing something, they'll actually stop them and say, hey, I noticed you're struggling there, like, how, what's going on here? What are you thinking? How are you? So we capture that as they're doing the journey. Yeah. So we rely heavily on our really smart researchers to and they specialize in people. I mean, that's what they do. So.
Well, I wonder if their subjects were actually admitting, or just saying, I really like to see your
Sometimes that information just comes out naturally. Yeah.
I love the talk because my professions are web development and technical writing, but my degree is in anthropology.
Okay.
Fit really well. The other thing I was going to ask is that whole qualitative, quantitative. So I'll just give an example. I did a technical writing project at a company where the guy who had started the company was sales advertising oriented. So his perfect model of a corporate environment was that very open, stand-up kiosks everywhere. And so for the technical writing team, we were like, there are times we've got to be able to
Mhm.
concentrate. And he was like, no, it's vitally important that everybody have access to everything all the time. So, of course, we know people like you to come in and verify it with your researchers, but they actually, so his was to put in like a white noise system. That was his solution, but then it was calibrated wrong. So now everybody was getting these pounding headaches and they're going
Oh.
to figure out. It was just layer upon layer of very ineffective, troubleshooting. But he was just so convinced that that was the most effective environment. So somebody like that who is so convinced, when they have, let's say, one model on paper and all these like articles or studies that say how important this environment is, and you come into a company and, or you come into
Well, although we don't get like a statistical significance of hundreds or thousands, we still do get enough of a sample size where, if it's a company of 100 or 50, we'll shoot for at least 15, right? So, to give, to kind of back up some of those claims. The quickest way to get people to kind of do an about face is when you play back audio clips of people struggling because of either bad software or bad environment. So I mean, that's kind of a powerful thing that we do when we do our research findings deck. We actually pull quotes of people. No, it's audio visual. We show everything. We even, there's a second part to it where we represent the opportunities that we think we could address and move forward with. But just in terms of the raw data, we don't ever present the raw data. We give it to them. But the deck is actually, we pull quotes, we show videos, we play audio clips. And so when you have a CIO, let's say, who spent 3 years and millions of dollars building the software that everyone hates, and he's like, no, everyone loves it, it's great. But then you play back audio clip after audio clip after audio clip of people basically saying it's the worst thing ever. They can't, they can try, but they'll be out of a job, right? I mean, yeah. So, and there's been a number of cases where we can't confirm or deny, but we've caused some awkward situations with people losing their jobs because of, our findings. Yeah. Or it's because of policies that they've put in for years. And so when we highlight the problem, we're always very mindful of not really painting any one person or thing in a negative light. But typically what you'll find in organizations is like, the other peers know, like when you present, like, these are all the things wrong, and here's, and they're like, they can kind of point it back to, oh, well, it's because of this and that, and it's this person. So, that naturally sort of kind of, that's how we approach it, is we present, all of that data to them. Yeah. Initially, we start everything on the same sort of playing field. So we don't want to introduce unnecessary bias in how we test. So we try to treat it all the same. Now, if our stakeholders who own the project who own the project say, hey, are the older folks that you're going to, because of the nature of our business, they might be hard of hearing, or they might have disabilities, or so they'll usually inform us if we need to make a different approach, just because of the people that they serve, or solutions that they're building for. But otherwise, we try not to inject any of those biases if we can. In some cases, I mean, we've had I think we tested a mobile app with a group of older people, and we had, on one case, one of the participants got really angry because we basically their response is like, I'm 60 years old, I don't know how to use a damn phone, like what are, and so there was that. But then on the other hand, we've had the opposite, where we assumed that this person wasn't tech savvy, and then they felt offended. We're like, hey, just because I'm 60 years old doesn't mean I don't know how to use a phone. So because of that, we approach it, everything the same, and then we let them or the company, tweak our approach if necessary. It does. I think the thing that we found, millennials and older people have a lot more in common than they think. And that's kind of a unique thing that we're sort of noticing. But I think older audiences are quicker to just get on the phone. So if they have a problem, or if it's dealing with a bank, or if it's like a customer service issue or software, they're really comfortable just getting on the phone and calling someone. And so whatever you do online has to be easier than calling them on the phone. Well, if you have more and more companies that are trying to reduce costs by lowering call volume for self-serve, that kind of becomes a clash of interests there, right? So that's one issue. Versus, I think, not necessarily millennials, but I guess more of the Gen. What's in between the Gen Xers and the millennials? I forget what they're. The what? Zennials. Yeah, Zennials typically don't want to talk to anyone. Like, they if they could do everything online, like they'll spend 3 hours going through a process online than spending 2 minutes talking to someone on the phone. So it does sort of affect, if we're creating a solution and it has a broad reach, we have to meet the expectations for all the different, groups. Yeah, it has to be easier than calling on the phone. Yeah.
And yet you need to see if the response, I think that's the other thing people don't.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think, some of that can be solved just not even with software, because there's some organizations that can't help. Like there's just a 2-minute wait, right? Or if you talk to someone, it's a minimum of a 24 hours before you get a response or whatever. And so in those things, it's important to actually communicate that. Say, oh, it's going to be a 2-minute wait, and then a minute later, so, oh, you have 1 minute. Well, I mean, that helps alleviate a lot of that. Versus not telling them anything, and you just so there's things that you can do to help alleviate the anticipation. There's a study done by another company. I don't know if you ever noticed, but baggage claims at an airport is always so far away. So there's a reason for that. When they actually built baggage claims to be right next to the gate terminals, and complaints were through the roof, because it actually takes about 5 or 6 minutes to unload the bags from the planes. So people were just standing there idle time waiting for their bags. And so what they did is they actually just moved the baggage claims to be 8 minutes away, so you're forced to walk to it. And people don't get angry when they're walking, right? Because they're having to walk. And so usually by the time you get to the baggage claims, hopefully the bags will start coming. And so that was a thing that they did. Like, there's no way to make unloading the bags faster. So what they did is they just moved the baggage claims away. So people are too busy walking to really think about it and get angry. And so that was kind of, it's kind of related to goals. Yeah. Yep.
Have you seen companies that started maybe reported and then onboarding what you guys do, like how they changed their style and approach to starting something or investigating what they're doing, totally have to kind of deconstruct it and reconstruct it because of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's been several orgs who now sort of integrated our methodology into their sort of process, so they're hiring their own researchers, and then there's been companies that after a restructure have basically kind of rebuilt from scratch systems that were previously done. And actually, another story I would have, and it kind of goes back to the thing that you talked about the workplace. So there was a fertility clinic that wanted to build a new facility, and a major sort of architectural firm in Texas known for building medical facilities were initially engaged to build that, design that structure. And the fertility clinic said, no, like we don't think this is the right answer. And basically, if you ever go to any medical facility, it's always this mecca of science, bright lights, tall ceilings. And so we're not an architectural company at all, but they came to us, said, hey, we really think they have the wrong answer. Can you come in and do your research? We're like, sure, we'll give it a shot. And what we found is that fertility clinics, no one wants to go to a fertility clinic, right? It's like you're only there because you have to be there, and it's a really sensitive topic, right? So having bright ceilings, bright lights with a huge hallway and a receptionist, that's like the wrong approach. Like, yeah, I mean, what we found is that really you want your fertility clinics to be a house. You want to treat it like fine dining. You want dark lights. You want it to be cozy. You want a greeter at the door. You want someone to tell you that everything's going to be okay. You don't want it to feel like a hospital or a clinic. It's like going to therapy, right? Like you want it to be a lot more intimate. So we came back with those findings, and they loved it. They went back to their architectural company and said, this is what we're doing. As a result of that, the architecture company hired their first ethnographic researcher. Don't know what to do with her, but they hired her because of us. And she's just like, I don't know, so yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Tom.
Awesome.